Welcome to my court. Court is now in session. Hi, I'm the Supreme Court Justice of the comment section. You can call me the Supreme or Judge Rebble Pebble. I've been silently judging people in the comment section for years now. Tucked safely in the confines of my mother's basement, I have been passing my judgment on internet personalities since I was a kid. I cut my teeth as a prosecutor on cases like Matt Ogus and Lee Priest, but I really made my mark in the Conor Murphy case. I've seen it all, from James Charles's in Assless Chaps to David Dobrik and his 47-year-old kissing prank debacle. And now I've decided to make it official by reading you my judgments of the shit I've seen on YouTube. Today's case looks at unresolved sexual tension amongst men. It's a civil case, so I won't be finding anyone guilty or not guilty, but I will be telling you my summary judgment of who the official winner of this case is once and for all, and all the reasons leading up to why. If you're squeamish, leave my courtroom now because court is in session. In this case of Sneako v. Buckingham, it centers around what is now referred to as the Polony text, the text that started it all. As with most things in life, this case revolves around Polony. It's like my mother always used to say, boys and their dongs are like crackheads with money. They want everyone to know they're holding and how much. In this case, she might have been right, because the private text message that started all of this was about le sausage. Yes, in this courtroom, the acceptable terms for dong include, but are not limited to, le sausage, tool, knob, wang, chopper, plonker, weenie, schlong, member, gold member, and of course Johnson and Free William, His Majesty the Prince. So a few months ago, the self-professed internet straighty and the defendant in this case, one Mr. Sneako/Shneako, aka Sneako, sent the plaintiff, Mr. Buckingham, a text message referencing his own PP. Yes, you heard that correctly. An alleged hetero cisgender male sent another man a message talking about his junk. Not to his friend, but an acquaintance. Yes, it is for this reason that Sneako v. Buckingham, aka Sausagegate, is being heard in my basement courts. With it under the Civil Offence 51-20 Section C subsection 1.1, also known as the Aguilera Ordinances. These offences relate to internet acquaintances who think they are your friend and so can talk to you in any way they feel necessary. Now, normally a case like this wouldn't even reach the Supreme Court of the comment section here, but because of the mitigating circumstances that caused the defendant, Mr. Sneako, to make this violation against Mr. Buckingham, we must give Sneako a chance and look at his case fairly. So, what are these mitigating circumstances? Before I get into them, I want to start by saying, for the record, that bisexual people get dragged into a lot of down low situations when bi people and DL people are very, very different. Sneako v. Buckingham, aka Sausagegate, presents a classic case of down low brothers. Now, down low brothers can be any race. It's not about skin color or background. Instead, it's about living a heterosexual lifestyle while sharing your husband's bulge with another man. DLBs do not have any romantic feelings for men. only sexual ones. And the evidence presented in this case proves the latter, namely, the way DLBs always insist on making gay comments about and around other straight men. This is a classic strategy of DLBs. Bisexual men and women are only interested in other bisexuals. That's why you hardly ever hear from them. It's the DLB or download brothers, men and women who chase the straighties. Yes, there are down low women too, mind you. And this is an important distinction to make because in making my judgment, I had to determine who fired the first shots in this case. Looking at the evidence that was presented to us, it is clear on both sides that it was the defendant, Mr. Sneako, who fired the first shots. But again, that alone doesn't necessarily make him liable for any social damages. Because like I mentioned, there were mitigating circumstances that informed Sneako's decision to mention his Johnson to a straight man. So why was Buckingham targeted? Why was Hamza targeted? These courts will focus on Mr. Buckingham at this time. Any references to Hamza will be stricken off the record until such time as he files his own case. So, Mr. Buckingham, why were you targeted? Well, it all goes back to that fateful day that you decided to hang a dong in front of the plaintiff. It has been confirmed by both sides that Mr. Buckingham was at a party with Sneako. The defendant says that he thought that Mr. Buckingham was immature for hanging dong in a fountain or something to that effect. While these courts cannot confirm if Buckingham did or did not hang dong in a fountain at the behest of Reckless Ben, I can confirm that I have seen video of the plaintiff skyclad in one of his or Reckless Ben's edits. Now I wonder if that was the same day that all of this happened. In any event, it is not an absurd claim for Sneako to make about the plaintiff. Mr. Buckingham has been known to hang dong from time to time. Now, it is this court's belief that this is the pivotal fact that Mr. Buckingham failed to see as the mitigating factor for why the defendant thought it was okay to start talking about his sausage with him. Buckingham's crime was that he failed to recognize he was in fact being flirted with by Sneako. If he had seen the signs, things wouldn't have escalated so out of control to the point that we find ourselves here in my courtroom. It is at this point that I would like us to review Exhibit C, the private dinner between the plaintiff, the defendant, and his girlfriend. In a live stream, Sneako claims that he found Mr. Buckingham's behavior childish, repulsive even, and that he wouldn't want to associate with a grown man who would hang dong in a fountain. But the record proves that the defendant, Sneako, had a dinner with Mr. Buckingham. That is a bombshell right there. Why would you have dinner with someone you don't vibe with, as the kids say? I wonder who paid for the bill. However, these courts are not here for speculation, so we'll have to leave it at that. Now, other people were at the dinner, of course, but this dinner was private. It wasn't streamed to the public, so it is considered private by this court. It is this court's belief that Mr. Buckingham was being cased or scoped out for a possible gangbang or similar. In simple terms, Mr. Buckingham was finna be turned out that night. a fate he seems to have obliviously and rather luckily escaped. Mr. Buckingham simply missed the signs or wasn't even aware of the signs. And these are one of the things that happen when, country boys or Eastern boys go to Hollywood, straight boys that is. They have no idea what's going on over there. And, maybe Mr. Buckingham grew up in the suburbs because on the day he received the infamous Dick Riding message that started all of this, he took it at face value. And like any normal person who takes things at face value, he took major offense. As someone with executive dysfunction myself, I admit that I too would take offense. However, the law is the law, and city boys have protection in the law of these internet. And the plaintiff simply just overreacted. This court finds that Mr. Buckingham's naivete caused him to react overly harsh to a simple, down-low, flirtatious text. Our associates in Atlanta, West Hollywood, and Cape Town agree that the text was a flirtation which was designed to elicit discussion about the defendant's polony. An expert witness from Atlanta stated that down-low men usually send aggressive texts like this to straight men to see if they can start a raunchy discussion with them, but without leaving any evidence in case, their significant other, who's a woman, would find it. The conversation is supposed to lead to the topic of a possible meeting in a private room, where usually alcohol will be served and the straight man will often receive a bro blow that would never be talked about again, and the like. Our expert witness's testimony in this area has been sealed by this court to protect their identity. It makes a lot of sense. You send a message that seems vaguely aggressive but also homoerotic to another straight man, so that in case, if your girlfriend finds it, she won't be suspicious. But at the same time, it could pique his interest. Why would you mention your dick? And then you start talking about sizes and sending each other pictures, and it turns into a serious flirtation. That's how it normally works with the city boys. But dear Mr. Buckingham was not aware. This court therefore finds that Mr. Buckingham's reaction, warranted or not, escalated this case onto a whole new level. The plaintiff saw that message as a direct challenge to his masculinity and just kind of disrespectful because he didn't know that he was talking to a DLB. It has been well documented that straight men who are not part of the swinging and DLB communities are notoriously bad at reading sexual signals. We saw a similar case of this in the James Charles versus the straight waiter case, brought to us by Tati. Or we saw it in the James Charles versus the straight model case and the James Charles versus the straight jock case. Basically the James Charles versus the straight boys cases, on which I was the lead prosecutor in the comment section. So in my career from this basement, I'm aware that this kind of thing is a common phenomenon. The question this court is deciding on is the violation of the Aguilera ordinances by Sneako enough to warrant the counterattack launched by Mr. Buckingham on Instagram and later on YouTube? When does defending one's masculinity and reputation go too far? Is there even a limit to protecting your reputation? Is it really true that all is fair in love and war? That is what I contemplated when hearing this case from my mother's basement and making my decision, and that is what I will be basing my judgment on. In my testimony, we heard from the plaintiff, Mr. Buckingham, claim that after he railed on Sneako all over Instagram, the defendant called him in tears, tugging on the plaintiff's heartstrings in a bid to have Mr. Buckingham take down the Instagram posts. This is particularly relevant because to the public, Mr. Sneako pretended as if he was putting Mr. Buckingham in his place, as we saw in the evidence. And he was doing this for his fans. In a live stream, the defendant calls Mr. Buckingham on video call and scolds him in front of his fans. This clearly shows that Mr. Sneako has a level of premeditation to the things he does. This leads the court to believe that he was indeed trying to arouse Mr. Buckingham with the original dick riding text, and unfortunately for him, it just went astray. Sigmund Freud would really be the perfect expert witness to detangle all the unresolved sexual tension in all of this. It should have been clue number 2 to Mr. Buckingham that this dude wants to bone with him. I mean, what dude cries in front of another dude unless they want to bone? I mean, in all my years on the bench, I can say that I've never seen another man cry in front of another man, in front of me. Only women have cried in front of me, and it's because they wanted me to hug them. And then, of course, before I knew it, they were boning me while I had, my hands the back of my head, and they just did all the heavy lifting. So Shneako wanted to bone Buckingham. And in that live stream, the defendant even said multiple times that he was not at all offended by the content of Mr. Buckingham's post, given that he is a comedian. So even though now he alleges that he was offended by the content of the Instagram posts, it's clear that he's either lying then or he's lying now. Now, the reason this case is being heard in my court is because of what happened next. That's the central reason. My good friend Joe Gillis once said, "You never wake a sleepwalker because he may fall and break his neck." The same sentiment applies to DLBs. You must never, ever confront a down low brother, or he may fall into panic mode and deflect. This is exactly what happened when the defendant, known as Sneako or Shneako to his fans, entered the point of no return. And that was the minute he leveled vape claims against the plaintiff. In a live recorded video stream, Sneako repeatedly stated that the plaintiff, and I quote, literally said that he wanted to vape my girlfriend, end quote. If we go to the record, the testimony was reiterated over 5 times by the defendant, which was a disproportionate response to Mr. Buckingham's Instagram post, especially when Shneako himself had done a live demonstration of how another man's face once touched his testicles during a swinging tryst with the very same girlfriend at the center left of all of this. So how do you go from doing a live demonstration on someone else's stream to now getting offended when somebody just writes a text describing something similar that hasn't and wouldn't happen? So it is the opinion of this court that what had started out as an innocent flirtation ended up as a hectic vape allegation case against the plaintiff, Mr. Buckingham. Now, if there's one thing you don't do to your crush, it's accuse them of vaping your girlfriend. Vaping is bad, and falsely accusing people of vaping is worse. In this case, it was a clear manipulation of facts by Mr. Sneako, which was done out of fear. It is the opinion of this court that Sneako was in fear of being rejected by his crush, Mr. Buckingham, which is devastating in any situation, but to vilify them for your bruised ego is typical down low brother behavior. After this accusation was leveled at Mr. Buckingham, heretofore he says that he slipped into a psychologically disturbed state. He even cut his hair in front of us. The precedent set by the case of Spears v. Paparazzi 2007, we know how emotionally disturbed one has to be in order to shave their head in public. The plaintiff's reaction was understandable. Vaping allegations can ruin someone's life, never mind their career. Nope, but it didn't stop there. The defendant, Mr. Shneako, continued to drag Mr. Buckingham in a classic attempt to isolate him from his friends. This court finds that act to be particularly evil on the part of the defendant and actually inexcusable. The only time this court has seen one man pressuring other men to pick a side in a friendship is in the gay romantic comedy series Uncoupled, starring Neil Patrick Harris and now streaming on Netflix. That is another reason why this court believes that all of this revolves around the defendant's unresolved UST between him and the plaintiff. In another sense, he's one step removed from being officially digmatized by Mr. Buckingham. Now, this is not a joke. We've had expert witness testimony before that digmatization is a real, serious condition, which even may lead you to slap somebody. With vaping allegations against him, his friends abandoning him, receiving threatening calls on his private cellular telephone line, and his mental health on the decline, the plaintiff decided to wait until after getting his own personal win before responding to the heinous allegations, to prove that he in fact was not a schlong rider. He amassed over 1 million views on his own original content during this entire debacle. His own successful video had nothing to do with Mr. Shneako at all, so it cemented Mr. Buckingham's talent and ability on his own to these courts. This was important so as to not arouse doubt about his motives. This was clearly not a clout chase. It was a takedown. This is different to the Cassidy Campbell case in that that was an attempted takedown, but it did not happen. This was brutal. There are two types of men in the world, my granddaddy used to say. Men who dominate and men who submit. If you are not willing to take it to the death, then you will never win. It seems that the plaintiff, Mr. Buckingham, took the time to virtually slice this little boy to tiny little pieces, like sushi. Yes, as we all know and have all seen in Evidence Exhibit D, in an unseen and unexpected shocking twist that these courts haven't seen since Barrett Paul's scathing expose on the New York gay for pay influencer scene. The plaintiff, Mr. Buckingham, revealed raw, steamy, salacious photos of the defendant eating ass in Calvin Klein shorts and holding his tool in his hands in the buff. The plaintiff claims that he found the photos online and is only using them to highlight the defendant's hypocrisy and that of his entire career. The implication here being that those fans who follow Mr. Sneako are all basically either gay for pay simps who are secretly in love with Sneako and that's why they entertain him, or the implication is that his fans actually are straight guys taking bad advice from a download brother about straight women. Either way, the hypocrisy is evident in both cases, and that is why this twist to the story has changed this entire conversation. Regardless of the finding of this court on the original issue, the real question on everyone's mind forevermore will be, what kind of a straight man? What would have happened to you in your childhood as a straight man to put yourself into a submissive position in order to be photographed with your stiff Johnson and being photographed by another man at that? It's not that he did those pictures that's disturbing. Art is beautiful. It's that he protests too much about women and being a man's man, and that he did those pictures. It's the combination of his attitude and the pictures that put his online character into disrepute. Not the pictures on their own, the pictures are fine. It's the combination of the pictures and the attitude. It is this reversal that the plaintiff, Mr. Buckingham, has managed to achieve what we call a flip the script moment in our judges' chambers. Mr. Buckingham not only got over 1 million views on his own content in the middle of a time when everyone was calling him a vape master, but he also transformed his mental anguish into a compelling case that presented his side of the story for over 2.5 hours with all the receipts. And to give the final death blow, he exposed the new leader of the straight male community, supposedly, as a sex worker for men. Mr. Buckingham committed a particularly spectacular mental, spiritual, and physical takedown, a KO, a feat that these courts have never ever seen before. And before I give my verdict, let us go to the actual comment section to discover what the jury had to say about all of this. So, on Mr. Buckingham, the plaintiff's Twitter page at Buckingham_show, he made a post on the 30th of September at 6:07 p.m. that reads, NSFW sorry, after falsely accusing me of threatening to vape his girlfriend and stating I cannot handle gay jokes, I have found public photographs online of Sneako masturbating in front of what I assume to be a gay photographer. I'd love to know the story behind why these photos exist. End quote. And attached to this tweet is the evidence exhibit D. And then underneath that we have, a couple of comments, and a lot of the people are not focusing on the vape allegations now. They're all focusing on the schlong they can see. So one person says, I wonder how Andrew Tate will feel about bringing this dude on his show after seeing these hot pics. LMAO, not a good look. Then we have another user commenting, that's what I'm saying. I probably shouldn't have clicked. Another one says, just chubbing up with the homies to take some exotic nudes on a Tuesday. We won't go there. Yeah, after watching that vid, Sneako is done, not gonna lie. And another one says, you think this would hurt him? This will probably only fuel his ego, bro. Nice try, though. And another one says, nah, he is crying for sure. Dude cries over the slightest pushback. And finally, someone says, damn, and he is rock hard for his photographer. Tate ain't gonna be happy about this one. So, as we can see, a lot of the comments have completely forgotten about the original reason this case was filed in the first place in my courts. And now all they see is baloney. So now how Mr. Sneako responds will be very telling. His best strategy is to ignore, ignore, ignore. Regardless of anything he says, he will always be referencing this moment in his career. So now is the time that these courts feel he should not respond. But of course, he'll have to consult his own counsel on that matter. Now, yes, he will still have his loyal supporters, as we heard in some of the comments, but there's no way to erase seeing your hero practically eating ass in a photo shoot or holding his stiff junk in his hand on camera, literally caught with his dick in his hand. It's like, how desperate for fame are you that you would lie about homoerotic photo shoots you've done? Now, this would have been a completely different story if Mr. Shneako had been open about his proclivities or his past. Something we have also, seen a theme of in the cases against Murad Murali, who just needed some money, 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 money. And so this brings me to the essential moral of the case. Unresolved sexual tension between bros always leads to disaster. We need, as a community, to start embracing down low brothers so that they do not feel the need to play these long, twisted out day games, which result in their own public humiliation, because that's what day game leads to. But who knows? There actually may be a part of Mr. Shneako that excites him, that we've all seen his junk. He will no doubt get offered more money by rich men in certain countries who want him to entertain them. He will no doubt even become more popular over time. If he does make a statement, he would be safe, wise to just come out as being straight with a fetish for cucking or M2M, which is what DLBs engage in, according to our expert witness testimony, which has been sealed. Now, I must reiterate that this case has nothing to do with the bisexual community, who, as we know, do not engage in such activities of chasing straight men. So this case brings up a lot of questions about male friendships and interactions, questions that Sigmund Freud would find quite stimulating at this point in the 21st century. I mean, why didn't Mr. Buckingham realize that he was being flirted with in the first place? And if he went back in his mind to other interactions he has had with his guy friends, can he now sit down and actually recognize that sometimes some of his guy friends were actually looking at his body and trying to bone him? Does he realize that, when he goes streaking and does his naked horseplay video stunts, some dudes are actually looking at his body? I mean, you go out in the world and you think you're living your life, but people are looking at you and they have other plans for you. This is the city, and the city boys are doing what they do. And are you aware of that and the safety around that, Mr. Buckingham? And because of how society is set up, guys can't say anything. Mr. Buckingham is a tall gentleman. He had the long hair and the facial hair. And it makes sense that his crush would find him, as a viable specimen, because Mr. Buckingham represents that masculinity, whereas, as we've seen with most of these manosphere people, they can't even grow a beard or facial hair. So, this unresolved sexual tension always grows and grows until it busts a nut all over my courtroom and I have to clean it up. Because that's what I do. Now, Sneako and people like him can hopefully use this as a teachable moment. Once I pass my judgment, it'll hopefully give him a lot to think about and, pay attention to how dangerous mass communication and media is. Now, hopefully in the future, people who are not qualified, in other words, who do not hold degrees or some form of formal education in mass communications, will not be allowed to reach the numbers that these really dangerous minds are allowed to reach. There is a way to be edgy within bounds of social norms. And only those who are educated, either through a certain amount of experience in performing the work for certified agencies or in ways which can be tracked, or people who just have the qualifications, people with the degrees in journalism, in communications, in filmmaking, in broadcasting, media studies. Those are the ones who should be allowed to reach the numbers that these dangerous minds can reach. Otherwise, what kind of society are we building if any old Yahoo can go online and create a cult around them? Then why are people going to school? And why is there such a high youth unemployment rate? And why is our generation the most educated and unemployed? So really, Shneako, it's time to learn from this. And if you really want to revive your career, just be open and frank about yourself. Someone to watch would be Brayton Howard. He passed away a few years ago, but he was an excellent example of the type of man that Shneako could aspire to be in his rhetoric around his sexuality. Brayton Howard was not afraid to speak about what he liked and who he was. Now, he was a controversial figure, but the way he spoke about himself was always authentic and true. And so I find, as the Supreme Court Justice of the comment section, that this court is not satisfied that the defendant, Mr. Sneako, has been able to prove his claims against the plaintiff, Mr. Buckingham. And so, Sneako, your case is dismissed. Judgment for the plaintiff, Mr. Brandon Buckingham. Sneako's channels shall be terminated with immediate effect. Thank you, and I think we're done here.